He noticed the silence before he noticed the stares. It always began with silence. The moment Marcus Hill stepped into the first-class cabin, conversations softened, laughter faded, and a few heads turned just enough to make sure he felt it. He was used to it. 38 years of living in America had trained him to recognize that pause, the one where people decided who you were before you opened your mouth. Marcus adjusted his dark blue blazer and walked down the aisle, ticket in hand. He had boarded late because of a last-minute work call. The flight attendant glanced at his boarding pass, hesitated for half a second, then pointed him forward without a word. As he placed his bag in the overhead compartment, a white man in seat 2B frowned. "I think you're in the wrong section," the man said flatly. Marcus smiled politely. "I don't think so." "This is first class," the man replied, louder now. "Coach is back there." Marcus held up his boarding pass. "Seat 2A. The man squinted, then scoffed. "Must be a mistake." Marcus sat down anyway. Crow. Across the aisle, a woman whispered something to her husband. A flight attendant paused, watching from a distance. Marcus felt the familiar tightening in his chest, not fear, but exhaustion. He closed his eyes. He had earned this seat. He had earned everything. But none of that mattered right now. Because to them, he was just another black man who didn't belong. 5 minutes later, another flight attendant approached. "Sir," she said carefully, "may I see your boarding pass?" Marcus handed it over without a word. She examined it, then nodded. "Everything seems in order." She walked away. The man beside Marcus muttered, "Unbelievable." Marcus stared straight ahead. He told himself to breathe. The plane doors closed. The engines hummed to life. Then it happened. "Excuse me." The man in 2B suddenly called out. "I want to report something." A senior flight attendant hurried over. "Yes, sir. This man is making me uncomfortable," he said, pointing at Marcus. "I don't feel safe sitting next to him." The words hit harder than expected. Uncomfortable. Unsafe. Marcus turned slowly. "I haven't said a word to you." "I don't care," the man snapped. "Look at him, Ithy." The cabin went quiet again, deeper this time. The senior attendant looked uncertain. "Sir, what exactly is the issue?" "I want him moved," the man insisted. "Or I'll file a complaint." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Ma'am," Marcus said calmly, "I paid for this seat. I'm not bothering anyone." The attendant hesitated. "Sir, would you mind stepping out into the aisle for a moment?" There it was, the familiar request, dressed up as politeness. Marcus stood. As he did, 2 other passengers began recording on their phones. He followed the attendant toward the front galley. A 3rd crew member joined them, whispering urgently. "We've had complaints," the senior attendant said. "We may need to de-escalate." "De-escalate? What?" Marcus asked quietly. "Existing." Before she could answer, airport security boarded the plane. The cabin erupted into murmurs. The man in 2B leaned back, satisfied. Marcus's heart pounded, but his face remained composed. "Sir," one officer said, "we're going to need you to come with us." "For what reason?" Marcus asked. "Disturbing passengers." Marcus laughed once, not out of humor, but disbelief. "I haven't disturbed anyone." "Sir," the officer said firmly, "please cooperate." As they escorted Marcus off the plane, cameras followed. Whispers spread. Someone muttered, "Figures." Someone else said, "I knew it." Marcus walked with his head high, but inside, memories crashed in. The first time he was stopped by police at 16 for matching a description. The teacher accused him of cheating because his test scores were too high. the investor who smiled politely before choosing a less qualified white founder. He had built armor over the years, but armor still cracked. In the terminal, they sat him down. "What's your occupation?" one officer asked. "I'm the CEO of Hill Aerospace Technologies," Marcus replied evenly. The officer blinked. "Excuse me." "I design flight navigation software," Marcus continued, "including systems used by this airline." The room went silent. The officer cleared his throat. "Sir, we just need to verify by all means," Marcus said. "Call the airline." 20 minutes later, a woman in a navy suit hurried toward them. "Mr. Hill?" she asked breathlessly. "I'm Laura Kensington, Vice President of Operations." She extended her hand. Marcus shook it. "I am so sorry," she said. "This should never have happened." The officers stepped back. "What's going on?" one asked. Laura turned sharply. "This man is one of our most important partners." The color drained from the officer's face. Back on the plane, the captain made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay." Then he paused. "There has been a serious error in judgment involving one of our passengers." The cabin held its breath. "Mr. Marcus Hill," the captain continued, "we would like to personally invite you back on board." When Marcus re-entered the cabin, the atmosphere had changed. No whispers, no stares, only shame. The man-in-to-be avoided eye contact. Marcus stopped beside him. "You said you didn't feel safe," Marcus said quietly. "I've lived my entire life feeling unsafe because of assumptions like yours." The man said nothing. Marcus turned and took his seat. The flight attendant knelt beside him. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears in her eyes. Marcus nodded. "I know." The plane took off. But the story didn't end there. Because the videos had already gone viral. By the time the plane landed, millions had seen the footage. Hashtags trended. News outlets called. The airline's stock dipped overnight. The next morning, Marcus stood behind a podium. "I didn't ask for this spotlight," he said to reporters. "But if my humiliation can expose a truth, then let it." He paused. Racism doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers politely. The man from seat to B was identified. His employer placed him on leave. The airline fired 2 staff members and announced mandatory bias training. But Marcus wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, he announced a scholarship fund for young black engineers. 6 months later, he partnered with airlines to redesign de-escalation protocols. And 1 year later, Marcus boarded another flight. Same airline, same first-class cabin. This time, no silence followed him. A young black boy and coach stared wide-eyed as Marcus passed. Their eyes met. Marcus smiled and gave a small nod. The boy smiled back. And in that moment, Marcus knew the seat had never been the point. Being seen was Marged Hill had always known the weight of unseen eyes. Growing up in Atlanta, he learned early that perception could be a cage more confining than any wall. Teachers would call on someone else first, neighbors would clutch their purses. Even friends would hesitate to introduce him in certain circles. He built armor over the years, sharp suits, calm demeanor, and a meticulous career path that led him to become the CEO of Hill Aerospace Technologies, a company responsible for designing some of the most advanced flight navigation systems in the country. Every achievement, every award. Every dollar earned had been a silent rebellion against assumptions made long before anyone met him. Yet, on this particular Tuesday morning, no amount of success could shield him from what he already knew awaited him in the first-class cabin of flight 213 to Chicago. Marcus had booked the seat weeks in advance, a reward for the sleepless nights and the stress-filled meetings that had made him who he was. He boarded late, thanks to a last-minute conference call, and stepped into the aisle, ticket in hand. Sir, the cabin hummed with the soft chatter of travelers, the rustling of papers, and the clinking of coffee cups. He noticed the subtle shifts, the conversations quieted, the smiles faltered. The eyes that followed him measured every inch of his movement. Marcus adjusted his navy blue blazer and strode forward, exuding a calm confidence that belied the unease bubbling around him. Seat 2, A. As he lifted his carry-on into the overhead compartment, a man in seat to be leaned over with a frown etched deep across his forehead. "I think you're in the wrong section," the man said, his voice tight. Marcus held up his boarding pass. "Tour," he said simply. The man blinked. "This is first class. You should be in coach." Marcus smiled politely, as he had done thousands of times in his life when faced with judgment before a word was spoken. "I believe this is correct," he replied calmly. "Must be a mistake," the man scoffed. Marcus did not engage further. He'd learned long ago that arguing would only feed the insecurities and biases of others. He sat down, keeping his posture straight, hands resting lightly on his lap. Across the aisle, a woman whispered to her husband, and he caught just enough to feel their judgment. Minutes passed, and the tension grew tangible. The flight attendant approached him. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" Marcus handed it over. She scrutinized it, hesitated for just a heartbeat, then nodded. "Everything seems in order." The man beside him muttered something under his breath, loud enough for Marcus to hear. "Unbelievable." Marcus did not respond. The plane doors closed. Engines roared. Flight attendants prepared for takeoff. And then it happened. "Excuse me." The man in to be called out, loud enough for several passengers to turn. "I want to report this passenger. He is making me uncomfortable." A senior flight attendant hurried over. "Yes, sir. This man is disturbing me. I don't feel safe sitting next to him." Marcus's chest tightened. The word unsafe carried a weight he had carried since adolescence, a word whispered in countless classrooms, offices, and streets. "I haven't spoken to you," Marcus said quietly. "I don't care," the man snapped. "Look at him." The cabin fell silent. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to pause. The senior attendant looked unsure. "Sir, what exactly is the issue?" "I want him moved," the man insisted. "Or I will file a complaint." Marcus's jaw clenched. "I paid for this seat. I am not bothering anyone." "Sir, may I ask you to step into the aisle for a moment?" the attendant said. There it was, the polite pretense of procedural hiding blatant discrimination. Marcus sighed, rising, keeping his composure. Two other passengers began filming with their phones. Airport security was called. Marcus's heart remained steady, but inside? Every memory of inequality surged the time police stopped him for looking suspicious at 16. The teacher accusing him of cheating, the investor choosing someone else despite his superior proposal. Armor or not, the sting of history resurfaced. At the terminal, officers asked routine questions. Marcus answered evenly. "And your occupation, sir?" One officer asked. "I'm Marcus Hill, CEO of Hill Aerospace Technologies," he said calmly. "Our company designs flight navigation software, including systems used by this airline." Slat. The officers exchanged glances. "Call the airline to verify," Marcus said. "I assure you everything is in order." 20 tense minutes passed. Then, a woman in a navy suit arrived, hurried steps carrying authority and urgency. "Mr. Hill?" she asked, slightly out of breath. "I'm Laura Kensington, Vice President of Operations. I am so sorry. This should never have happened. Marcus nodded, his expression neutral, but his mind racing. The officers stood back, embarrassment clear on their faces. Laura verified his credentials, apologized profusely, and made arrangements for him to return to his seat immediately. The flight attendant escorted Marcus back, and the cabin's energy shifted. Eyes that had judged and whispered before now avoided him entirely. The man-in-to-be looked away, shame replacing arrogance. You said you felt unsafe, Marcus said softly as he passed the man. I've lived my entire life feeling unsafe because of assumptions like yours. Perhaps now you understand. The plane took off. The city below shrank, the clouds above serene, and Marcus exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The videos had already gone viral. News outlets, calls, social media exploded. Hashtags like #racism-in-flight and #SeeMarcusHill trended worldwide. The airline faced scrutiny, staff were suspended, and internal reviews began immediately. Marcus, however, didn't seek revenge. He saw an opportunity. Within days, Marcus announced a foundation to support young Black engineers, providing scholarships, mentorships, and internship opportunities with his company. He partnered with airlines to create bias training programs and de-escalation protocols. Marcus gave interviews, spoke at universities, and became a symbol of calm, decisive leadership in the face of injustice. Months passed. His life moved forward, but he never forgot that day. He remembered the way he was humiliated publicly, yet remained composed. He remembered the eyes of the little black boy who watched him board first class during a later flight, wonder and hope shining back. 1 year later, Marcus was on another flight, same airline, same first-class cabin. The stewardess greeted him warmly. The passengers smiled politely, their conversations uninterrupted by fear or judgment. He passed by a young boy in coach wide-eyed, clearly in awe. Marcus nodded, and the boy grinned back. In that small exchange, Marcus realized the power of visibility, representation, and dignity. It was never about the seat. It was about being seen for who you were, not what someone assumed you to be. Every glance, every whisper, every discriminatory word he had endured over the years had led to this moment, a moment where the world paused and recognized the injustice, learned, and slowly began to correct itself. Marcus Hill, CEO, mentor, and survivor of lifelong bias, finally allowed himself a rare smile. Not because he had proven them wrong, but because he had survived, and in surviving, he had given others a chance to see that dignity is not a privilege, it is a right.